People have to want and be convinced that they take that out of their own accord, except of course that you have to stop crying in the streets or excesses. But when it comes to personal behavior or morality, it's not to be imposed by the force of police. Coming very quickly before I finish with about his attitude even as a father and grandfather. Just to make it brief, since I'm grandfather of a big troop, so I'll give example of that. That's my advice. Anyway, the prophet goes into the prayers, and then he's standing in the pulpit to give the sermon, like the sermon on Friday. He's standing there, speaking. And then comes one of his grandchildren, still trying to walk, and then he falls. He leaves or interrupts the religious sermon to go down to carry him. In another occasion, something so beautiful and amazing. In the prayer, there are cycles in every prayer: standing, prostrating, down, and then of course you must have seen going hands and knees and forehead. This act, by the way, of the prayer is what the Prophet said, the closest you are to Allah, because you have that humility. Your head, the symbol of vanity and pride, your hands, your power, your feet, all on the floor, from which of the ground, symbol of the ground, from which you're created, to which you're going to be returned, and out of which you're going to resurrect. That's have a great significance. Anyway, so he was in his most act of devotion, the highest act of devotion and prayer. And then one of his grandchildren come and ride him on his neck. I think many people say, almost like shutting my neck. And the Prophet continues for long, unusually long period of time. So after he finishes the prayer, the companion said, "O Prophet of Allah, what's wrong? What happened to you? You stayed for too long in that position." You know what he said? He says, "My son," the Arabs use son also to mean grandson. "My son, had a ride, rode me while I am in the prayer, and I hated to interrupt his ride." In another occasion, which went further than that, and I'm concluding with that. In one occasion, to play with his grandchildren, Hassan and Hussein, the very illustrious grandchildren, the Prophet made himself a horse for them. I did that sometimes with kids, go hand and knees, let them ride on the back, So he made himself a horse, the Prophet, the final Prophet of Allah. So simple, so reachable, that he's playing horse. And he let them ride on his horse and walks and say, what a wonderful knights you are, and what a wonderful horse is underneath you. That is Muhammad, the real Muhammad. I feel very ashamed that for such a personality, I could not really do justice to the many aspects of his character that has been masked from many people by the clouds of falsification, hatred, religious bias throughout history. To the point that some Western historians actually give you a dozen of them, non-Muslims. They say that nobody has been abused and attacked in his character more among all prophets, more than Prophet Muhammad. Let's move towards a new paradigm. We need a paradigm shift. Not of clarification without evidence, without ground, not by attack because of hatred, accepting hatred and propaganda, false propaganda, but objective and careful study of his true history from its most authentic sources. Only then we can move to a much better world where people are free to believe in what they believe, but show the same courtesy that Muslims show to all of the prophets, saying, "Peace be upon them all," so that maybe, perchance, there will be an appreciation of him, if not as a prophet, he is as an example, as the Quran says, of decent human being. I thank you very much again, and peace be.
I'd like to thank our guest speaker, Dr. Jamal Badawi, for his time here and making the trip down here to St. John, despite bad weather. Before we head out, I'll be taking some questions and answers. Some questions from you and hopefully the answers from Dr. Badawi. They can be related either to the topic or any questions on Islam you have in depth. So, that's what it is.
Looks like I answered all questions. That's good.
Yeah.
How does Islam and people who follow Islam deal with religions which came after, which are other than Christians and Muslims? Like how does Quran relate and tell Muslim people to deal with them?
You want a politically correct answer or truthfully correct answer? I suppose the second. Well, Muslim, of course, as I mentioned earlier, believe in the Quran as the verbatim word of Allah dictated to Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, through the agency of Archangel Gabriel, who is a well-known figure also in the Bible as well. And the Quran, as far as you have to begin first by documenting what you said by the Quran. And the Quran, like I said, in more than one place, clearly indicated that Prophet Muhammad was intended as the last and final prophet in whose mission there is the culmination of the core message of all of the prophets plus, so that it becomes a guidance for those coming after him. That's in the Quran. The second source, authentic source of Islam is hadith. That is the authentic saying of the Prophet of Islam, peace be upon him. And he said again, very clearly, La nabiyya ba'd, not messenger. There is no prophet, no messenger. If you say there is no prophet after me, we said that every messenger is a prophet. So that includes prophet or messenger will ever come after me. Number two. Number three, if one were to look at the prophetic history, take the Bible, for example. The Bible, of course, is the closest thing to the Quran in that sense because it's almost like a continuous Abrahamic tradition of successive prophets. And my humble understanding, I understand corrected, that in the Bible you don't find really hundreds of years pass by without a new prophet coming to remind people, to revive their faith, to correct their path. Now, it is already 14 centuries after the statement, there is no prophet after me, both in the Quran and by the Prophet. Yet, we fail to find any example of any prophet whose influence on humanity and the number of his followers comes anywhere close even to minor prophets, let alone major prophets like the 5 greatest ones. That means something. That means history bears testimony. There are claimants of prophethood, of course, and people who believe in them, they are certainly free to follow them. But name a prophet of the weight that we find in the Hebrew Scripture, the New Testament, or finally the Prophet Islam. 14th century. Actually, in the Hebrew Scripture, sometimes you wouldn't go even to more than 100 or 200 years before a prophet is come. Sometimes you get more prophets at the same time. At the time of Jesus, there was Zechariah, there was John the Baptist. At the time of Abraham, there is Prophet Lut and Shu'aib. At the time of Moses, there is also Shu'aib. His brother Aaron was also a prophet. But now, what explained that? But I respectfully say, that a Muslim doesn't have to, to please others by saying, oh, okay, yeah, I believe in any prophet also after that, because that's lack of integrity. Because his holy book that he claims to believe in, his prophet that he claims to follow, said otherwise. So no Muslim belief will be shaken in that sense. But in the meantime, the Quran makes it clear that freedom of religion, this is something that many people misunderstand, is mentioned in the Quran in so many places. I know some people keep quoting La ikraha fi din, I think it's chapter 2, verse 256, 255 and 60.